Hello everyone, we are back with another video. We are doing our first tutorial today. I'm going to be showing you guys how to paint a Blood Angels Space Marine. And we're going to do this with a sort of slap chop, but not really slap chop method. We're going to be using reds and oranges to build up a transition on the armor, and then we're going to use a contrast paint, Flesh Terror's Red, as a filter to bring it all together. Now you're going to need some dry brushes. I've got 3 examples there. These are the army painted ones. We don't want the small, we don't want the large. We're going for the middle size brush. So if you use makeup brushes, go for something this size. A little bit bigger, a little bit smaller works just as well. So we're going to move these out of the way because we don't need them. And we're going to start. And the way we're going to start is we're going to start with Khorne Red. And we will be dry brushing. I've got a old base here that I'm going to use just to put some paint on. Because I don't actually own a normal palette, I only own a wet palette, and wet palettes aren't any good for dry brushing. I'm going to load the brush up with some paint, and we're going to work it into the bristles, like so. And then on a piece of tissue, we're going to take off the excess. Now, we don't want to take off all the paint like a traditional dry brush here. We are going to be sort of over brushing, I guess is a sort of term. Is we want to paint pretty much the entire armor, but where you get the recesses sort of around the trim on the shoulder, you know, closer in here on the leg, around the feet, the arms, where it's hard to get, we're going to leave black because that's going to be our shadow. So with that being said, we're just going to start dry brushing, and don't worry if you make any mistakes here. This is just the first step, and everything is going to go onto this, and it's going to look better. It'll look bad at the start, and it'll look better as we go through. So again, as you see, it's quite a heavy brush. It's not a wet brush like traditional painting, but it certainly isn't a traditional dry brush. We are working with a lot more paint on the model because we want to colour those panels. We don't want to catch edges here, really. So as you can sort of see, this is where we are currently up to. I'm going to pause. I'll be back once I've got the first layer down. After the first step, this is where we stand. I forgot to mention as well, we did prime it with Vallejo black primer. If you don't have this, use a rattle can, perfectly fine. If you don't even have a primer, just base it with a black, because the black now gives us our shadow. And I was putting out before on the trims around the legs, sort of on the knee, inside here, and around here. So this is where we currently stand. Now we're going to move on to paint number 2. We're going to do Evil Sunz Scarlet. I'm not washing the brush because, again, we know we're doing a transition. If you want to wash the brush, that's fine, but you're going to have to wait for it to dry and whatnot. So really, there's no difference. If I was going from from red to green, or I was going red to orange, or whatever, I would then change it. Orange is kind of a bad example because we're going to be doing orange in a little bit, but if you're changing color dramatically, because then you're gonna, you know, basically affect the color you're putting on. So same again, but this time we want to focus on less. So if you was to look at this and say we painted 90% of the armor, the 10% being the black bits, now we probably want to paint, I don't know, 60%. So all we're going to do now is, again, focus on these, but we're going to be a little bit more careful now. We're going to start focusing where we want our highlights. So an easy way to do this is have your light from above, and you can already see on the model we have light here, 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 on the head, top of the shoulders, top of the knee, top of the feet, down the side of the legs, on top of the arms, fingers, and then if we spin it round as well, we have the same light here, little bit of light on the backpack here, and then a few bits down here. Again, if you don't want to do these steps, stop whenever and start on the details, because if you're not a fan of painting, or you just want to get an army painted for a competition, then you know this will certainly suffice as an army, as a color for your army. So, and you can do this with pretty much any army. If you want to do Ultramarines, just change the reds for blues. You want to do Dark Angels, change the reds for greens, and so on. So we are now sort of focusing on top of the shoulder pads, where they would get more light hitting them, and it would get darker as it goes down. This one's obviously at an angle, so we'll focus more on the top of it, like so. And you can see that red now getting a lot more intense. So I'm going to repeat this on the whole model, and I'll be back when it's done. And there we have it. Again, stop here. We've got one more step of dry brushing, and then we'll be moving on to the magic. So you can start to see now where we've got shadow. Certainly under this side here, there's a lot of shadow behind that leg, and a good example is on this shoulder pad. Nice and bright from the top. We get darker, and it's darker around the edge. So next up is Wild Rider Red. These are in dropper bottles, so they're a bit more thin than other paints, than my other paints, because they're thinned down. But Wild Rider Red, and I'm going to do a little bit of Troll Slayer Orange if I've got any in here. Just a bit. There we go. This is going to be our sort of bright highlight, and it doesn't really make too much sense at the minute, but it will do once we start. So again, we're going to take off the excess paint. Like so. We don't want too much of this on. We don't want to go crazy because there's quite a brightness here in comparison to what we've already done. So now we're going to focus on pretty much, if I said before we were focusing on like 60%, now we're probably going to do like 20%. We're just going to catch those real high parts of the armor. Now, because my paint is a lot more thinned down than out of a tub, this will probably take 2 coats of dry brushing, because we don't, we're not getting a crazy brightness change straight away, but we will. We just have to be a bit more patient and do a few extra coats, and it'll be fine. So again, we're basically repeating every step we've done. We're just going on a smaller area than what we've currently been doing, but you can start to see where they get that highlight starting to show now. Good example on the leg there, where we've got that transition going from our Khorne Red round to our Mephiston, round to our Evil Sunz Scarlet, and then where we're up to right now. So I will be back when it's done. There we have it. I realised I forgot to press play. Don't worry, I've done nothing. I was just about to start and we weren't recording. At this point, you can stop, but we are looking a bit orange. And but what we want to do now is add some thin down Flesh Terror's Red contrast. Just a little bit of water, just to give it a little bit more flow to it, really. And now you can, obviously you don't need to be neat here, but we're gonna basically paint the entire model. And what this is going to do is it's going to bring all those colours together. It's going to emphasize the shadows, emphasize the highlights, and it's also going to turn that orangey to a brighter red. So the thing to remember when using contrast as well is make sure you finish the part you're doing before you move on, because if you are painting and you decide to do half, like, if I'll show you on the gun just so it doesn't ruin the model, but let's say you were painting this bit here red, so we'll paint the bottom half and then we'll stop. We'll let it dry and then you'll come back and paint the top half. You're going to end up with a line between the two. So break the model down into sections: shoulder pad 1, elbow pad, arm, hand, kneecap, leg, foot. Do it like that and you'll be totally fine. Also, if you're not happy with anything, if it looks too not red enough or whatever in certain places, don't be impatient. Let it fully dry, because again, if you put paint on while it's still wet, or while it's still drying, I should say, there is a chance that where it has dried, you'll pull paint off and you'll end up with a chunky sort of circular line on your model, which won't. But that shoulder pad's almost dry, and now we can start to see it's brought everything together. The shadows aren't as dark, but the shadow is still there. We compare it to the other shoulder pad, but we're starting to look more like that deep red that Blood Angels are known for. Again, you could change up the Flesh Terror's Red for like a Bile Red. it would give a different result. Try it out, see what you like, see if it's for you. If it's not, then you can pick a different colour. There's plenty of reds to try. There's also speed paints you could try that are different shades compared to Citadel. All will work. This method works for pretty much anything you can think of, and it doesn't have to be Space Marines. You could do it for Orcs. You could do it for anything, Eldar or Eldari these days. It's just down to what you want to do. So I'm going to finish this off and I'll show you what we look like when we've done that. And there we have the red armor completed. Now there's a few things to remember, or you can always change. One, there's still a lot of darkness sort of behind the backpack and definitely in sort of the midriff sort of thing. Now, if you don't like that look, you can always go in there with a smaller dry brush. Or if you're not an idiot like me and you've glued the arms on, take the arms off and paint them separate sort of thing. Same with the backpack. Again, change it, do what suits you. This is just a guide on how to get to this stage. Everywhere else in between is pretty much it. So I'm going to call it there for this. The red armor's done. I'm not going to focus on any of the details because, quite frankly, you know, they're self-explanatory. You know, Blood Angels don't have a trim from memory. The Crest Eagle is black, highlighted with a grey. Same with the gun. But yeah, it's a really quick, it's a really effective method of getting your models popping, because I don't know if the camera does it justice. The camera makes it look a lot brighter than what it is. It's a lot darker, it's a lot richer. One thing to remember is when you are watching videos, not just from me, but from other painters, is, you know, what you see on the camera is somewhat slightly different to the results you'll get. Doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, just means that's how cameras work. But yeah, as an example, you can see the gun. That's where we were at before the contrast, and that's where we finished after the contrast. And we have our shadows pretty much around the rims of everything. You know, again, I might put a picture at the end of this. I might paint this off camera and show you a finished picture, or I might actually do the details on another video and show you how to do them. But yeah, hope you found this useful, guys. If you've got any suggestions, you want to see more, then leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.